Welcome to the Lucas and Lucas podcast, episode number 213.2. That is accurate according to all records dated back to 2020. Joined by Lucas Frankel, as always. I'm Mike Lucas. There's a ton of news going on, not just in the sporting world, but in the real world. But Frankel, for the last 2 days, you've been blowing up my phone with hot takes about none other than Kyrie Irving. So without further ado, take the floor, my friend. Do whatever, say whatever, and let Kyrie have it.
Well, let me just preface what I'm about to say by saying that I'm hoping that Kyrie Irving is still alive, or he's nothing seriously wrong. There's nothing seriously wrong with him. Just because we haven't really heard from him. He hasn't really said anything in about 2 weeks' time. So I guess my first thought would be I hope that he is physically okay and not in any harm. That's right. But assuming everything's okay, here's where I stand with Kyrie Irving. He's missing his fourth straight game tonight. It all started. This all seems to coincide with two things. One, when the police officer didn't get any charge or weren't charged for one of the many killings that seem to be going on in the world.
This one was the Jacob Blake killing, just to give any clarification.
And then immediately after that happens, Kyrie Irving just doesn't show up for the game. Just according to reports, it says he doesn't want to play. And this has been going on now for over a week. Missing his fourth straight game tonight. He's missing tomorrow's game against the Knicks. That's Wednesday's game against the Knicks, and then a game on Saturday as well. And there's really no timetable for his return. It's truly baffling that this guy who's making, a max contract, and upwards of $30 to $40 million per year, can just decide that, I don't feel like showing up to work, so therefore, I'm not going to tell anyone, and you face no discipline, no repercussions, nothing. I mean, in what universe is this acceptable? I mean, if you just decided, you know what, I'm just not going to show up to work today. I'm not going to tell anybody. I just don't feel like it, and that's the end. And that's the end of the discussion. Like, well, how would that fly? You would be fired before you could even make a foot out the door. This isn't the world we live in. I can't believe that he's getting away with this. Why is no one doing anything about this? I just don't understand. Could you imagine if Patrick Mahomes before a playoff game just said to the Chiefs, I'm not really feeling it today. Good luck without me. How absurd is that?
Maybe Kyrie has PTO built into his NBA contract. Who knows? I mean, it doesn't make sense to me that he wouldn't tell anybody. That's my bigger issue than him not showing up or playing. Now, with all the events going on in the country, with the no charge of the officer, the Capitol riots and coup and all that, it makes total sense that someone like Kyrie would want to take a day off, reflect, get his thoughts together, get his mind together. Maybe it takes longer than a day for him to do so. But then you hear the reports that the Nets couldn't reach him. And that's where I draw the line. It's one thing to take a personal day, mental health day. Hey, my mind's not in the right spot. We saw a lot of guys in the bubble feel the same way when the shootings were actually happening. And, there was a chance that the league was going to just cancel the season midway through the bubble because NBA players didn't feel like their voices were being heard while they were playing. So I actually don't have an issue with Kyrie missing some time. My issue is you have to communicate that to your bosses, to your teammates. And the fact that you can't take 30 seconds out of your day to text KD and be like, hey, man, I'm sorry. I'm just not in the right headspace to play. Go in without me, or to text Nash or Sean Marks or anyone that's where I draw the line and have an issue with Kyrie here. It's not even the time off. It's the lack of communication because, you're a leader on this team, whether you like it or not, Kyrie. You're the second best player. You are a leader. When you have a max contract, you're a leader. And when your teammates see you slacking off per se and taking the time off and not being there, it has the potential to become a very negative trend. If Kyrie's getting away with it, then I can get away with it. And that's not how it should work, but that's how guys think sometimes. So taking the time off, Kyrie, when you're ready to play, come back and play. But you have to communicate that to your peers, your coaches, and the front office. So it's not a MIA, where's Kyrie? Let's send a missing persons report to the NYPD to go find him.
And then there are also reports surfacing on Tuesday that he was at a maskless party to to put a cherry on top of this situation. But at the end of the day, like in the history of sports, can you think of anything else like what we're seeing with Kyrie Irving, where a guy just doesn't show up, doesn't tell anybody, and faces no repercussions? Can you think of another scenario where this has happened?
With the no repercussions, no. No.
And it seems like no one's paying attention to it. Like this is he should be kicked out of the league. He should forfeit like his whole salary for this, in my opinion.
It does feel like the Nets are tiptoeing around the whole situation because they know they need Kyrie fully locked in to win a championship this year. And they know they need Kyrie fully committed. And, you look at the Last Dance documentary, Phil Jackson let Dennis Rodman go to Vegas for a weekend. Just kind of do his own thing, collect his thoughts, and come back. And Rodman was locked in. Maybe that's what Kyrie needs. Now, Rodman, I believe he was fined, right? They did fine him for missing.
I don't remember. That is potentially
the only other thing I can think of.
That's good.
That's the only thing I can think of that's even remotely close. So,
all right, let's move on to college football. Alabama did what they have done all year. They dominated their opponent, beating Ohio State 52-24, as you pointed out. Same record, same score as they beat Texas A&M earlier in the season, but this wasn't the peak Ohio State team. Trey Sermon lasted one play before he didn't come back. That was, Justin Fields is already playing about probably like 60% tops with that injury, and losing your top running back didn't help matters. They were missing their top defensive lineman, and when you face Alabama, you need not only do you need a full strength, you need everyone clicking on all cylinders in every possible second. So that was just was too much to overcome. Alabama completes a 13-0 season. Saban now has the most national titles ever by a head coach. First coach ever to win three titles in 3 different decades. Devontae Smith just dominant in the first half. Didn't do anything in the second half because he got hurt, but 12 catches, 215 yards, 3 TDs in the second half. Mike, is this the greatest college football team we ever saw?
In my lifetime, offensively, and I asked you this question last night, and I actually kind of wavered on my own thoughts from last night, but this is as good an offense as I've ever seen, and it's right up there with LSU's team last year, which when I saw them in person, I said, I'll never see a team better than this. Now, Bama's defense was not very good to start the season. They got way better as the year went on. What they did against an all-SEC schedule, setting the new SEC record for points per game throughout the entire season, is remarkable. Mac Jones set records. Devonta Smith set records. Najee Harris set records. They won 7 of the 15 individual college awards because they were the most talented team in the country. And for Ohio State to have a chance to compete last night, they needed to play their best game. Alabama was so much better than everyone else in America this year that Ohio State needed an A+ game, and they needed Alabama to have a C game. We saw Ohio State's A+ game against Clemson. And when a team plays their best game in a semifinal, it's hard to replicate that the next week. For whatever reason, you get one chance to play your best game of the year. They wasted it against Clemson. Wasted is the wrong word, but they used it against Clemson. Last night, they were outmatched. They were outmanned, and they were outcoached. And Alabama, we could talk about playoff expansion all we want, Frank. We could have had a 2-team BCS format. We could have had a 4-team playoff, an 8-team playoff, a 16-team playoff, a 32-team playoff, or a 64-team playoff. Bama was winning the whole damn thing this year, and it wouldn't have been close.
Yeah, they are. Their talent on that team is just silly, and I tallied it up. So like LSU had Caleb on Chason, Burrow, Justin Jefferson, Patrick Queen, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So 5 guys taken in the first round. Alabama might break that record with 6. Devontae Smith is going to be a top 5 pick. I don't know. Devontae Smith, real quick. It looks like he's playing on like rookie mode, and he's playing on like the highest mode possible. The way he just runs past people,
he glides.
It's unbelievable. I've literally never seen a guy just glide. You said glide past an entire defense. Like no one can stop him. That when he was on the field, he was unstoppable. Every time they wanted to go to him, he got the ball and he got a ton of yards every single time.
My favorite play last night was, I think it might have been the first drive of the game. It was 2nd and 9. They threw a little bubble screen to him, and there was 3 Ohio State defenders that had an angle on him. And then next thing you know, you blink and he was 15 yards upfield. It wasn't a touchdown. It was just a random bubble screen play that he outran 3 Ohio State defenders with an angle. And Ohio State's defense is loaded with 4- and 5-star recruits. This is not him doing this against like Abilene Christian. I mean, these are the best recruits in the country that Alabama didn't want, because if Alabama wants a kid, he's going to Alabama. So these are the second choice litter, but Ohio State gets the best of the second best, and he just outran him. The dude's a freak of nature, and he's been doing this for 4 years. I didn't realize he was the one that caught Tua's touchdown in the national championship.
When did you realize that?
Did you say it last week? You the one that told me last week?
I feel like that's all they've been talking about. Like this whole Heisman run, ever since it became like a focal point in the conversation, that kept going back to that play.
I just didn't put two and two together until like the last week. Like, because I watched him all year. And for the record, by the way, do you know what team held Devontae Smith and Najee Harris to their worst games of the season?
I'm saying that. I never would have guessed.
Just saying. I think if A&M played Bama again, they would have got boat raced once again. But the whole argument of keeping them out because they lost to Bama was just asinine, because it didn't matter who Bama played this year. They were going to boat race everybody.
Listen, so Texas A&M, listen, that was their chance. And if you don't want to face Alabama and you want your best shot at the playoff, either move out of the SEC West or change conferences. Because as long as you're in the SEC West, you're going to face Alabama every single year, and you're going to lose every single year, and you're never going to get a chance at the national title unless for some miracle happens and either Nick Saban either retires or decides not to coach anymore, or whatever. As long as the season with Alabama, they are going to dominate that division. And
no, it's true. And I heard Tom Hart on the radio this morning say that A&M has climbed 9/10 of the mountain, but that last 10th is Alabama, and the mountain goes on a gradual incline, and then the last peak is Alabama, and it's straight 90-degree up to Bama. But it's not an A&M conversation. This is an LSU last year versus Alabama this year. Frank, I think the one difference, I told you last night I thought Bama was better, than I did some thinking. I'm going to go with LSU now. And the reason I say that is Bama, despite playing an all SEC schedule, did it during a COVID year where practices were wonky, teams couldn't meet in the offseason as much, and on a day-to-day basis, guys were in and out with COVID. You never got a full camp with your first-team defense running reps. And as I forget who pointed this out last night, but this was the most base defensive season where they played the most base defense in the history of since they started tracking that number. So I think it's close. I think you're splitting hairs. If you gave me Bama, I'm not going to really argue against it, but I think LSU did it in a time where defenses were more prepared and they were equally as dominant.
So like here are some potential like things that may sway you one way or the other. Alabama had just one possession game all year long. That was the SEC title game against Florida. That game was never really close. Florida just got a ton of garbage time with Trask. LSU played 3 one-possession games. If that's your like barometer of how you're measuring this, LSU played a lot more closer games than Alabama did this year. But I think in the grand scheme of things, when we look back on greatest college football team ever, the reason why the 01 Hurricanes get so much love is because they had so many guys end up being, Pro Bowl players every year and go to the Hall of Fame. So we won't know until in the 5, 10, 15 years whether, oh my God, they had Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. Those guys are both in Canton right now. So like, Mac Jones Mac Jones may never play an NFL snap. Who knows? Like, you never.
True.
But in terms of like guys that could be first round picks on Bama this year, Devontae Smith is obviously a lock. Patrick Surtain's the best corner in the country. Jalen Hall is going to be a first round pick. Najee Harris, I think, will go in the first round. Mac Jones may or may not go in he'll either be a late first, early second round pick.
Is Leatherwood the last one? He better be.
Christian Barmore was the guy that I saw being projected as a first round pick.
Leatherwood should be a first round pick too.
I don't know. Was he senior?
Yeah, because he came back. He could have left last year. He came back this.
I was checking a couple mock drafts. I didn't see his name in the first round.
Well, then I would say the mock draft people text your boy Ryan Wilson. I'll text him if I have.
That was the one I looked at, and he did not have Leatherwood in the first round. But I mean, so like, there's a chance that Bama could break the record with 6 guys in the first round this year, assuming that Mac Jones does go in the first round, even though I'm not very high on his NFL future. The thing with Bama though is that like, you got NFL guys all over the field. You have an NFL offensive line. You have like multiple NFL running backs. You have 3 or 4 NFL receivers, and you're playing against guys against other teams where you may have like 1 or 2 guys on a defense that may end up playing at the next level. So the whole combination of that makes it look so easy for them, because you got Najee Harris, who has these enormous holes, and you have 3 guys that will be in the NFL making big time plays, big impact, and going against these guys that will never sniff the league, and you have those mismatches in every area of the field. It's impossible to stop, and that's what we're seeing with Alabama, and that's why these Nick Saban teams are so dominant all the time.
Well, that's what I said about Tua the other day. Tua is scared to throw in tight windows because for 3 years at Alabama, he was only throwing to guys who had 7 yards of separation.
Yeah, Devontae Smith is wide open every single play.
Every play. Yeah. I mean, Mac, you could put almost any quarterback in that position, and he might not be as good as Mac Jones, because Mac Jones, I think, played really well this year. But if you can't be successful with those weapons in that line, then you should not be a college quarterback.
Devontae Smith is what in the NFL?
A really, really, really good player. There are certain dudes who defy logic. And you look at Devonta Smith, and he's not the biggest dude, but he's always open. He's an elite route runner. He catches everything. And when he gets the ball, he's as dangerous as anyone I've ever seen. So I don't think he's as fast as Tyreek Hill, but I think he could be a game breaker like Tyreek Hill, in the sense that no matter where he is on the field, no matter what route he's running, you have to have two sets of eyes on him, or he's going to burn a cornerback in one-on-one coverage and then break, a 10-yard in route into a 60-yard touchdown downfield because he makes the guy miss and just is too fast.
What do you think of this? He's like a combination of the best traits possible from Antonio Brown and Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah.
Like a combination of those two
He's
guys.
faster than Antonio Brown, but a much better route runner and more versatile than Jackson. Yeah.
We'll see. His frame, he's just so small. I feel like one hit, and once he gets hit for real,
some of those dudes just don't get hit. He very rarely gets hit, which is insane. And some guys are better at avoiding hits than others. And the crazy thing, Frank, Jalen Waddle was just as good as he was until he got hurt, if not better.
Jalen Waddle, all the props in the world for Jalen Waddle for giving it a go in that game.
Should not have played last night. Should not have played.
I mean, hopefully he didn't re-aggravate anything, because that would be a real shame, because that dude has a real future. And even some mock drafts projecting him going to the Jets potentially with that 23rd pick, thanks to the Browns win, which catapulted the Jets up a few spots. But real quick, last thing about the draft. I've been going back and forth with this, and we talked to me in a week. I'll probably have a different answer, but option number 1 is trading the package or whatever it is. Number 2, number 23, whatever the Texans want for Deshaun Watson. That is option A. Option B is a combination of Penei Sewell at number 2, and then at number 23, either Najee Harris or Olave/Waddle. That would be
Waddle will not be there at 23, I promise you.
Okay, now then Olave or Najee. I think the Jets need a feature back. I've been hearing a lot of comparisons to Steven Jackson for Najee Harris. I think that dude will come. I mean, it's also tricky though, because the whole Alabama offensive line thing. How will he do when he's not playing against such dominant guys in front of him? But either way, Jets got a lot of work, and that'll probably never change as long as I'm alive.
All right, moving on. What's next?
Doug Pederson.
Dead.
Out as the Eagles coach. Won the Super Bowl a couple years ago. Only Super Bowl the Eagles have ever known. You feel like you do that, you get a lifetime contract. Kind of like whatever Jets coach or quarterback wins the Super Bowl, they'll never be fired. But the Eagles, they ran out of patience, or Carson Wentz just decided that he didn't want to play for Doug Pederson anymore, and he made the Eagles make a choice, and they chose Wentz over Pederson. And that's basically what this comes down to in my mind.
That is all it comes down to in anyone's mind, because Doug Pederson doesn't do what he did in Week 17 by putting Nate Sudfeld in for the fourth quarter without the reassurance he was coming back. You don't lose that game on purpose if you have any doubt in your mind that you're not coming back the next season. You win that game if your job's up in the air. You lose that game if you say, hey, I'm going to get a better draft pick. I'll lose this game. We'll have the 6th pick instead of the 10th pick. All that goes into it. But then you come back, it comes down to money. And the Eagles decided to pick Carson Wentz over Doug Pederson. So the move obviously rubbed some people the wrong way, and they chose the quarterback over the coach. But that was not the plan in Week 17. I can promise you that.
Do you believe Week 17 had any impact on Doug Pederson's status with the Eagles?
No, because I think it was a him versus Carson Wentz decision. But what happened and unfolded in Week 17 tells me that going into that game, he had every reassurance in the world that he would be coming back as the Eagles head coach in 2021.
I don't know, but I wouldn't go as far as saying that. I think clearly they were going to have a discussion in the offseason, because when you have that fractured relationship with the quarterback and coach, you just have to pick one. And that's why it makes it confusing for Pederson. I guess he was under the assumption he was coming back. But the whole Wentz thing and the fact they owe him so much money, just I guess made that. It's weird though. I'm curious to see when that tell-all article comes out about exactly how this sort of played out. What will be the sort of repercussions or what comes out of that. Either way though, the Jets are still looking for a coach. Everyone immediately just jumps to, oh my God, Joe Douglas worked with Doug Pederson. The Jets should hire Doug Pederson. Here's my take on that real quick. I hate when teams just hire the coach that just got immediately fired. Like Adam Gase had just gotten fired by Miami, and you bring him right back. There's no time for reflection. There's no time for correcting what you did wrong or looking back on your rough past. It's just sort of going back and doing the same things that you did before. And I think that's a bad recipe. I think that it's you gotta let when someone gets fired like that, they need time to just collect themselves and regroup. So hiring Doug Pederson would be a colossal error by Joe Douglas and the Jets. The names that you're hearing as of now they're interviewing Robert Saleh in person. Their first in-person interview so far. Other guys are Joe Brady and Brian Dable. But at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. I don't really care who they hire as long as it's not Doug Pederson.
I agree with you that hiring Doug Pederson would be a disaster, but not for the same reason you think it's a disaster. I think it's a disaster because I don't think he's a good coach. I think Frank Reich was the architect behind that Super Bowl. I think he's what got the best out of Carson Wentz that season. I think he's what got the best out of Nick Foles in the playoffs. As soon as he went to Indianapolis to be the head coach, we've seen what he's done with Jacoby Brissett, Phillip Rivers, kind of rejuvenating his career. And on the flip side, look what the Eagles have done since he left. Carson Wentz has insanely regressed, maybe as much as any quarterback we've ever seen in a 2-year span. Jalen Hurts had some moments, didn't. And then we see what Doug Pederson did with Nate Sudfeld. That was his guy. That was his guy that he molded as a backup his entire tenure in Philadelphia. He finally gets in a game, and he looked like a potato. He looked like Nate Spudfeld. He looked horrible. If that's the guy that you had molded for 4 years to be your backup, finally gets a chance to play, and that's what he looks like, I just have no faith in Doug Pederson as a good head coach. I think it was all Frank Reich behind the scenes. Pederson was known as a gambler early on, going for it on fourth down. Then he became a conservative coach without Reich. I don't know how that dynamic played with, I don't trust my play caller as much or what, but I just wouldn't hire him because I don't think he's a good coach without an elite assistant staff around him. Without Frank Reich, his offense struggled mightily for 2 seasons. And I just think there are much better options.
Yeah, it's hard to say how that's going to play out. You're hearing some buzz about Lincoln Riley, but I'd be shocked if he ever left Oklahoma or left anytime soon. The big thing is does Carson Wentz? Do they trade Jalen Hurts? I think Carson Wentz is so disgusted with the whole thing. If they really want to limit, because you can't have this narrative playing out all of next year. If Carson Wentz struggles up, Jalen Hurts, you got to put Jalen Hurts in. They need to just end that and sort of like what Brady did with Garoppolo, just kick him out, get him out of his way. And I think that's the best approach for the Eagles for next season, because Carson Wentz, they need to support him and show confidence in him. Even though it's hard to say because you're supposed to be a professional athlete, he needs that we believe in you, we support you, you got this is your team. Go out there and show us, and not have that shadow laying over his head, kind of like what the Dolphins did with Fitzpatrick and Tua. That is not how you groom a quarterback to have success in this league, by pulling him at your first chance. Any sign of weakness. That to me is, if you're trying to groom a quarterback and groom a player to eventually be the CEO of your franchise, that is not the way to do it. And
this is what the Eagles should do. This is what they should do. And I agree. You have to build Carson Wentz back up from the get-go. You tell Carson Wentz you're moving Jalen Hurts to receiver.
No, I mean that's
listen. This is an elaborate plan. Please listen. You tell him you're moving him to receiver, but you also keep him throwing passes on the side and going through quarterback drills. You just keep him in a separate room. So he's hey, Jalen's going to the receiver room, and it's really the door. It's a one-way mirror room where Jalen can see through and still learn, and Carson Wentz doesn't feel intimidated. You keep Nate Sudfeld as the backup because that's the one guy Carson Wentz knows at this point in time he's actually a better quarterback than, despite how bad he played. And you say, Carson, it's just you and Nate, buddy. If you can't beat out Nate Sudfeld, then we got issues. So that means Carson goes in with a big head. He's going to dominate Nate Sudfeld in camp because it's Nate freaking Sudfeld. Maybe you bring in Nathan Peterman to add a little backup quarterback battle, just so Wentz feels he's I got these 2 quarterbacks behind me. I'm better than. But you just keep Jalen Hurts in the wing. He runs some routes at practice, but really he's still a quarterback. You're just hiding him. You're hiding his quarterback. And then when Wentz sucks again, you just cut him. You just cut him because you can't trade him. You can't. That contract's untradeable.
Well, if you cut him, then you're still on the hook for the salary. So
I'm saying, yeah.
I'm just going to pretend like what you said never happened.
It's a better suggestion than nothing. Is you have to just hide Carson Wentz, hide Jalen Hurts somewhere in the Eagles facility, and have Carson Wentz thinks he's a guy. But I don't know what else you can do because his confidence is shot, and you have to, for the money you're paying him, you have to build him back up, or try to at least.
All right, so moving on to the postseason right now. Divisional playoffs getting set to go underway. Putting you on the spot here, Mike. Who wins the AFC right now?
The AFC?
AFC.
The Chiefs. The Chiefs. I think the Bills are playing
no concerns about the turning on the on switch, being punched in the mouth. How do they respond? Okay.
Nope. Now, I think until you prove it, those concerns are valid. The Chiefs have proven that they have that switch. Look at the Super Bowl last year. They were down most of the game. Then Mahomes like, all right, it's time to win the game. Turn it on. Tyreek Hill, wasp route, touchdown, game over. Now, Jimmy G missed a throw late that should have won it. But besides the point, they proved they had that switch. I think they were bored at the end of the season. They really had nothing to play for. As soon as Pittsburgh started losing, that's when you could see Kansas City's play decline. I think Buffalo's playing really, really good now. But I do think, just like we saw Kansas City lose to New England in overtime 2 years ago in the AFC Championship game, a young team needs that taste of playoff success and then disappointment to then fulfill its full potential. The Chiefs had that whole cycle when they lost to the New England Patriots, came back the next year, won the Super Bowl. This year, I think they're going to win the Super Bowl again. This will be Buffalo's introduction to being a consistently elite franchise, but they're still not on the same level that Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs are.
So in your mind, it's pretty much set. Chiefs.
I would be shocked if the Chiefs don't make the Super Bowl. Yes, I would say shocked.
But Chiefs Bills AFC title game.
I can see the Bills losing this week, but yeah, I think it'll be the Chiefs are the preeminent team and the dominant team in the AFC. I'm not worried about the switch. I can see the Ravens beating Buffalo this weekend. Like, I don't think that's crazy. They're playing good, but I think the Chiefs are still a notch ahead of everyone else in the AFC.
I could absolutely see the Ravens going to the Super Bowl. This is the Lamar. This could be like the Lamar Jackson renaissance in these playoffs. They were counted out earlier in the year. He got that. He broke the ice. He didn't
do anything against Tennessee, by the way.
They were down 10-0. He goes out there. I wrote him off. I was like, all right, Titans are gonna win. It's over. And then he breaks that 48-yard touchdown run. Silences the critics. Goes out there.
I would not say he silenced the critics, for the record. I would not say he silenced the critics. He didn't throw a touchdown.
Got his first playoff win. Now they're playing with house money. They're going into Buffalo. That Ravens team, that defense is legit. Marcus Peters will square up. We'll shut down Stephon Diggs. Who else is gonna beat them on the Bills? Cole Beasley's gonna get 5 catches for 60 yards, and I think the Ravens are a terrible matchup for the Bills. They don't have Zach Moss. They just signed Devontae Freeman. I think everything is pointing, as much as everyone wants to believe that the Bills are going to do this, and everyone's been talking about a Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes AFC title game, I really believe that the Ravens can win that game, and then you play them against the Chiefs, and I just feel like the Ravens are playing with house money. There's no pressure on them. Lamar's got it.
Let me ask you a question. Fourth quarter, 3 minutes left, Lamar down 4. Do you trust him to bring the Ravens to the end zone?
I do.
3 weeks ago, you had said Lamar's the worst playoff quarterback ever.
Yeah, but he
didn't do anything last week.
I said he broke the ice.
He didn't do anything. He ran. He did what he does. He ran. He didn't throw the ball. He didn't have to. He threw for 178 yards. Credit where credit's due to Lamar. He won a playoff game. He beat Tennessee. They were down 10-0, and that comeback is impressive. But that was more on the defense than Lamar. He scored 20 points against a bad Tennessee defense. A bad Tennessee defense. They scored 20 points. Credit to Lamar for winning a playoff game. I think he was judged unfairly for being 0-2 in the playoffs despite all his regular season success. But let's not pretend that he did something heroic last week by beating Tennessee. They scored 20 points against a bad team, a bad defense, and Baltimore's defense shut down Derrick Henry and completely negated Ryan Tannehill in that offense after the first quarter. I mean, he didn't have to do much, and he did just enough. So bravo, but let's not pretend you have confidence in them to go in and score 35 points against Buffalo if it turns into a shootout.
I mean, I've seen this movie before. This reminds me of like those Giants teams where like they like sneak into the playoffs, everyone writes them off, they get hot at the end. Like right now the Ravens are the hottest team in the league. They are the single hottest team in the NFL, and I know the Bills probably have a longer winning streak, but if you tell me that it's the Ravens against anybody, right? I think the Ravens could be any team, any week, anytime. They are the team that no one wants to face right now, and the Bills are so disgusted that they have to face the Ravens next week instead of the Steelers, because the Bills would have destroyed the Steelers. That would have been an absolute just
a bloodbath
down. And now I have to face the Ravens with that defense and Lamar and that running game. Oh, that's a terrible matchup for Buffalo. Terrible.
I think you're trying to buy the underdog train too much. I still think Buffalo wins the game. Okay. I would not be shocked if Baltimore did pull it out, but I still don't trust their offense. I think they're running the ball well, and that's what they always do, but I just still don't trust Lamar when a team forces him to pass and takes away the quarterback run. He had 136 rushing yards that game. If a team takes away the quarterback run, I still just don't trust Lamar to beat a team with his arm yet. And it's partially on Lamar, and it's partially on the fact I don't like their weapons. Like, they don't have a lot of weapons on the outside, and we do know Buffalo can score on anybody. They've done it all year long. Buffalo can score on anybody. Josh Allen's playing at an unreal level right now. It's in Buffalo. They're going to have can Baltimore win? Yes. Do I think Buffalo will still win? Yes. And real quick, I forgot to mention this with the Jets, Frank. How about the 2 wins the Jets have? Both against teams that won playoff games. So the Jets were better than people gave them credit for this year.
I mean, listen, I've said it. The Jets could have easily had 6 or 7 wins this year. But they crapped the bed in so many games late. They should have swept the Patriots.
No one cares about the Jets. Let's go. I just wanted to add that one little stat in there for you.
For the Pittsburgh Steelers, it feels like the era is over in Pittsburgh. You got Big Ben. You got to move on from Ben Roethlisberger. Juju Smith-Schuster should be banned from the city of Pittsburgh for the rest of his life, because he was the single reason why that team got eliminated. I think he might be the single most hated player in the NFL. Like, opposing players. Which
is crazy, because he was the most loved player in the NFL after his rookie season, when he looked like the golden boy compared to Antonio Brown and his clown show.
Every team, like the way the Browns probably had like posters of, or like had that Juju sound on loop in their locker room, because the way they reacted after that game, they could not have been more aware of those comments. The nameless gray faces and the Browns, like that single-handedly catapulted the Browns to victory in that game. And I mean, Juju's not coming back to Pittsburgh. I guess that he's a possibility for the Jets, but he's not. He needs to go. The Steelers need to start over and maybe trade for Sam Darnold or do whatever you want to do.
Well, I think 2 things happened to Pittsburgh this year that derailed them, because I do think they were a really good football team. They got crippling injuries on defense, losing Devin Bush and Bud Dupree. They were a completely different team when those 2 got hurt. Secondly, Big Ben's just old as dirt. And we saw with Phillip Rivers this year. We saw with Drew Brees. We've seen with Ben Roethlisberger. These guys can play good for about 8 games, and they need breaks. They need time off. And Drew Brees getting hurt in the middle of the season might be a blessing for the Saints. Phillip Rivers, I mean, he can't throw the ball downfield. His Hail Mary this week was 5 yards short of the end zone, and it made no sense they didn't bring Jacoby Brissett in, but his arm died by the end of the season. Big Ben's arm, and they threw 60 times, which also they need a running game. That was another major issue with the Steelers, but Big Ben is not a quarterback at this point of his career that can carry a team offensively for an entire season. He looked good for the first 8 weeks, or good enough to win games, and then the last half of the season, he was god-awful. I mean, he was horrendous, and he took the Week 17 game off against Cleveland to kind of recover, and for a bit, he looked okay later in the game, but he looked horrible early on. I just think his arm's dead. It's like a pitcher, Frank. When a pitcher gets older, you maybe don't leave him in there for the 6th inning all the time. You take him out after 5 because you just don't know what you're going to get in the 6th. And Big Ben seems like a pitcher at that point of his career, or quarterback at that point of his career, where he can throw the ball 15 times a game well, and everything else after that is a complete gamble. Tomlin gambled 45 too many times in that playoff game. He ended up throwing 4 interceptions, and he's due the highest cap hit of any player in the league next year. You got to cut him. And I do think Darnold or Stafford or someone else will be under center in Pittsburgh next year.
All right, let's go through these games real quick. So Rams, Packers favored by 6.5. That line, I believe, was at 7. Opened up at 7. That Rams defense is scary. It scares the daylights out of anybody. I don't think there's any chance Green Bay doesn't win that game. Whether they cover or not, I'm not sure. Where you stand on that one?
I take Green Bay to cover, but I also take the under. I think it's an ugly game. I just don't think that Los Angeles will be able to move the ball and score consistently against Green Bay.
Ravens, Bills. Ravens are 2-point underdogs. I love Baltimore. Give me Baltimore.
I'll take Buffalo. If it was 3, I might take Baltimore to cover, but I think Buffalo at 2 is the move.
Chiefs favored by 10 against the Browns. The last time that the Chiefs didn't play a 1-score game was against the Jets. Feels like a lifetime ago. Every game since then has been decided by like 7 or fewer points.
So they played 1-score games. I got 2 words for you. Free money. Take Kansas City. They're going to absolutely smoke Cleveland. And I think that game ends up being a 20-point game.
You're probably not wrong, but the thing with the Browns is that they can control the clock. And with those dudes, Chubb and Hunt running the ball, that is a lethal 1-2 punch, especially in the playoffs. And that's what gives me a little bit cause for pause, because they can control the clock. They can keep the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands, and they're
down 3. They're down 3 linemen though. It's tough to run the ball when you're down 3 linemen.
They're getting guys back. They'll have their full complement. I believe they'll have a full complement back.
Okay. Still free money. Chiefs.
Last game is Buccaneers Saints. New Orleans swept the season series. The game's in New Orleans. The Buccaneers have been great against everybody this year except for the Saints, and it doesn't make much sense. The Saints just seem to have their number. To beat Tom Brady 3 times. I don't believe Tom Brady's ever lost to a team 3 times in his entire career.
It'd be the first time ever.
I'm staying the hell away from this game. I have no idea what's going to happen.
I would not bet this either, but I have been anti-Drew Brees since week 1, and I think he got the better of Tom Brady twice already. I do not think it happens 3 times. I think the Bucs end up winning this game, but it's going to be close. I think the Saints defense just knows how to slow down Tampa Bay. I just don't trust New Orleans to be able to score, because now that Tampa's defense is playing much better, and Drew Brees' arm looks like a rag doll.
Well, so did you see that picture of Brady next to that other 43-year-old dude to win a play? Like, it's like
that's tweeted out best plastic surgeon ever. It's crazy how much better our health is now. I mean, those older guys are smoking cigarettes during halftime of games. So
before we go, the Mets have won the offseason. They traded for Francisco Lindor and Carlos Carrasco. Meanwhile, the Yankees Yankees headline offseason move has been trading for Greg Allen and Socrates Brito. Is
great name.
It's just like,
we got to just sign LeMahieu. That's all I care about at this point.
But for me, like, you can't go with the status quo. Like, bringing back the same team as last year, as talented as those guys are, like, give me something new. I need fresh blood, something new to get excited about. I would love to like package Carlos Stanton, Gary Sanchez, and Luke Voigt for somebody. Like, make like a massive trade where we're not have all these strikeout or bust guys in the lineup. And
to get Mike Trout.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Stanton, Sanchez, and Luke Voigt, and you could even have like one of the top prospects, Florio and Clark Schmidt. Like, those guys for Trout.
Yeah, I'm in. Sign me up.
We'll get the Angels on the phone. That'll do it for this episode of the Lucas Podcast. Find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts. See you guys next week, everybody.